Hi, everybody. Today's Monday, July 14th, and our friend Larry Johnson is back with us. Welcome back, Larry.
Thank you for having me. And thanks for finally getting back to a decent shirt. Okay, good.
Larry, what was the big announcement that Donald Trump was just talking about? I'm going to announce it. I'm going to announce it. What was that?
It was a nothing burger. It's just that, you know, so reportedly we've suckered the Europeans into buying some more of our worthless crap. I mean, and I'm gonna impose sanctions in 50 days, maybe, yeah, 50 days. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if there had been a quiet behind the scenes communication that Putin said, we're going to finish off the Ukrainians in 50 days. Or Trump has told him, I'm giving you 50 days to finish them off. And, so maybe something like that. But uh, he's, as Peskov, the spokesman for Vladimir Putin, said, I don't know if it was earlier today or yesterday, he said, Americans have never stopped sending weapons to Ukraine, have never stopped. There's been an occasional pause here or there because of some supply problems in the supply chain. He said otherwise they've been funneling it in there for over 3 years. So he says this is nothing. They're not doing something new and different now. What's different is Trump gets to claim, hey, we're no longer supplying it. We're getting paid for it. We're making money. It's, big announcement. Big, he's just a carnival barker.
Yeah.
Come see the bearded fat lady. And you get in there and it's some old guy,
Larry, he's talking about 100% tariffs. You mentioned that maybe behind the scenes something different is going on that we are not aware of. But how about the Europeans? How do you find, because Donald Trump said something about European countries, specifically about Germany. He mentioned Germany, but he didn't mention the United Kingdom and France. And here is what he said, Larry.
I spoke with Germany, spoke with most of the larger countries, and they are really enthusiastic about this. They want to, and they're willing to go very far. I will tell you, as per your question, how far would I go? They want to go very far. They don't want this to happen. That's why I think from Putin's standpoint, it would really be good. He gets the country's economy is doing very poorly, and he's got to get his economy back. He's got to save his economy. He could save his country in a sense, but the economy can destroyed a lot of countries over the years. He wants to get that economy back. And, he's got a great country for trading and other things. If they could use the assets instead of war, he's got some tremendous potential.
Yeah, he's just smashing everything.
He's a moron. He really is. Trump is genuinely stupid. Let's start with fact number one. Russia's economy is not doing terrible. Not doing terrible. Russia deliberately slowed down its economy, so it's now growing at 1.5% because of inflation that had come into the country. They had 4.4% growth last year. So, they said, hey, we got a problem. We're going to take steps to deal with it. Unlike the United States, unlike Trump, who's, oh, yeah, our economy's doing great. Yeah, we're only $36 trillion in debt. And the interest payments on that debt is greater than our defense budget. Yeah, we're doing swell. Such a strong country. Of course, we can't produce enough artillery shells to keep up with Ukraine's use of it. So he goes through that, and the Germans, they're going to do Germany, France. Their economies are doing terrible. None of them are growing. And it's this Western denial. And then he genuinely believes that they're all Germany and France and the UK are going to start kicking up 5% of their budget to supply NATO. I mean, it's fantasy land. He lives in a fantasy land. And it's downright dangerous to have somebody that out of touch with reality in a leadership position.
Larry, if I don't know why Europeans are willing to pay this sort of money to the United States to send weapon to Ukraine, unless there is something going on with the establishment, between the establishment and Europeans behind the scene. There maybe they're doing something in order to capture the momentum, to have some sort of momentum in the United States in 2026. They can get the Congress, the majority in Congress. Do you feel that a long-term strategy, do they have some sort of plan behind the scene that we're not aware of? They're doing this. Even Donald Trump is willing, is so happy that they're sending weapons to Europe, but behind the scene that could hurt Donald Trump in terms of the support that he got from MAGA. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now, number one, Europe can't afford to pay for these weapons. So this is all verbal commitment on paper. Maybe what they're planning to do is to take the Russian money that they've frozen and steal it and pay it to the United States. That could be what their plan is. I think that's their only viable plan, frankly, to actually come up with the money. But, they're buying stuff that doesn't work. It's certainly not going to change the situation on the battlefield. And just because they say, we'd like to buy 100 Patriot missile batteries. Good luck with that. They don't exist. And it would take maybe, 4 or 5 years to produce that many. As far as the actual missiles, there are three. There's a Pack 1, Pack 2, Pack 3. With the Patriot, Pack 3 is the most expensive. And I guess Lockheed Martin reportedly can produce like maybe up to 700 of those a year total. Well, when you've got Russia firing, let's say 50 missiles at you, and the tendency is to use 2 to 4 Patriots per incoming missile. Well, let's just say it's 4. That's 200 missiles right there. That is, that's a third of the annual production in just one missile attack. I mean, this stuff, it's absurd. It's a scam. What they're doing. So I think Russia's just going to continue pressing on. I don't know if you saw the interview that Putin did yesterday with his favorite journalist. People need to watch that interview and listen to him, because he was sending some clear messages. And as far as the election for 2026, Trump's got bigger problems in Ukraine on that front. He's doing it to himself with this whole Epstein case. You can go online and see a number of MAGA supporters that are burning their Trump gear. They're furious with him. And it's, across the board. You saw Tucker Carlson. He's not backing off. So, Trump has really damaged his credibility, if he had any to start with. But whatever he had, man, it's gone.
What did Putin said in his interview that in your opinion, was so important?
No, that he said, basically the West has been lying to us all along. And so we've got to basically go our own way. We would pursue our own path without relying upon them, depending upon them. So it's not, clearly the Russians are over this need to be in a relationship with us. It's more of take it or leave it. If we're going to be in a relationship with you, it's going to be one based on mutual respect, and you stay out of our business. Now, otherwise, we won't be in a relationship. That was sort of the message I took away.
Yeah. Larry, do you feel that Europe is trying to escalate? Is Europe getting prepared? Because Macron said they're going to double the military budget. And by 2020, if I'm not mistaken, 2027. And how is that going to help Europe? I don't know if these leaders are doing this in order to stay in power, as New York Times reported. I don't know if you saw the report in New York Times saying
I,
that Netanyahu, whatever Netanyahu does for his position, is all about his position, not losing his position. It
yeah.
seems that the case of Europe is the same as in Israel. They're trying to do everything to continue the war in Ukraine, because as long as this war goes on, they can stay in power and somehow convince the public opinion that they're gonna do something big.
I'd like to know where the money. Just follow the money. You get in, you follow the money, you'll find out that there are people in France and Germany and the UK that have been benefiting substantially from this. And it wouldn't surprise me that they have direct ties to government leaders, and even some of those government leaders are getting kickbacks. These guys have no, I guess, reasonable or logical or viable path forward for building up their military forces and posing any kind of threat to Russia. Russia right now is probably the strongest military in the world, hands down. But again, it's built and designed to defend the homeland. It's not, we've now entered an era where these expeditionary military forces, which is, principally that's what the U.S. is set up to do, to send soldiers overseas to other countries. Terribly expensive, logistically very difficult to do, and then once they're out there, they're very vulnerable because of changes that have taken place with technologies, particularly with drones and hypersonic missiles. So, it used to be you could send a carrier task force and, oh boy, people would be frightened. We've got to stay away, those Americans. Look at how the Houthis did. They took on a carrier task force and drove it out of the Red Sea. And the Houthis were not sitting there like they don't have the armament and missile capabilities that Iran does, or naval capabilities that Iran does. So if the Houthis can do that to the United States, just imagine what would happen if the U.S. decided to get into a fight with Iran. I'm not saying Iran would suffer some significant damage, but the myth of U.S. invincibility, that's been completely obliterated. That, in fact, that's the only thing that was obliterated when, Trump dropped the bombs on June 25th.
Do you feel that if we assume that Donald Trump is honest in his way in putting somehow threatening Russia, if they cannot make a deal in 50 days, they're going to do something. Donald Trump would put tariffs on Russia. If we assume that was an honest sort of talk, what does the United States would do if Russia doesn't? I don't know what Donald Trump is seeking for. I really don't know. When I look at the way that he's talking about, every time he's talking about ceasefire or something like that. We have the Keith Kellogg. We have General Keith Kellogg in Ukraine.
Yeah.
What is the necessity of Keith Kellogg going to Ukraine?
Okay, let's start off. You said something about honest. In Iranian culture or Brazilian culture, what is the reputation of a used car salesman? Or do they look at used car salesmen as being honest or being dishonest?
It's obvious to be dishonest because you're not going to sell it.
I mean, in the U.S. culture, to call someone a used car salesman is not a compliment. Okay, it implies dishonesty, lying, deceiving. It's not. You don't come and say, "Man, I'm a used car salesman." Oh, geez. So I didn't know if it's a cultural universal. So for those who are watching from other countries, that's the meaning of it. Yeah. Donald Trump is a used car salesman. That's what he is. He's not some extraordinary businessman who possessed a great charm and savoir-faire. No, 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 no. He's a used car salesman, and he's going to tell you whatever he thinks you need to hear in order to buy his crap. That's what's going on here. Remember, the Hamas better release those hostages by Saturday or there'll be hell to pay. That's 4 months ago. Still, hostages weren't released over those kinds of threats. So he really, I listen to what he says, but he's not honest. And he's going to say whatever he thinks he needs to say to, fool you, persuade you, to get you to buy his line. So I think it's really the 50 days is either just an arbitrary number. I don't know, maybe it's his birthday, or he cut a secret deal with Putin. Putin said, "Yeah, I'm going to have this thing wrapped up in 50 days, and we'll have Ukraine will be surrendered." Then Trump can say, "Oh, I don't have to apply tariffs because the war is over." Who knows? But somebody says, "Oh no, I'm sure Trump's got a plan." He's a golfer. And golfers don't plan; they just hit the ball and hope to get to the hole in fewest strokes.
Larry, do you feel that Ukraine is somehow is Ukraine getting to the point that they would beg, they would somehow ask the other countries to put an end to the conflict? How is that? What is when that breaking point comes to Ukraine?
Well, I don't know. I think it's going to be soon. The word, there's two key points, Pokrovsk and Konstantinovka, that are on the verge of, they will be taken by Russian forces within, it could be within the next 2 or 3 weeks, maybe sooner. And when they fall, that's going to cause a major disruption in the defensive line of Ukraine. And Russia will actually be able to advance more rapidly, acquiring a lot more territory in Dnipropetrovsk, for example, and in Sumy. It really boils down to a simple math problem. So you look on the one hand, manpower. Who's got the most manpower? Well, Russia does. Just by virtue of Ukraine, at the start was a population of 42 million, and Russia was 140 million. So they got 100 million more people to draw upon, number one. Number two, Russia is producing tanks. Ukraine doesn't have, all they had in store at the start were old Soviet tanks. And they received a number from the United States and the French and the Brits. But they keep losing those tanks. Russia's lost tanks too, but Russia's got mass production. And so the contrast is something like Russia can produce a T-90 tank in a month, whereas right now, the United States, listen to this carefully, they're taking their M1 Abrams tanks that were manufactured 40 years ago. And instead of building new tanks, they take the old existing tank and basically give it a complete makeover. That takes 2 years, 18 months to 2 years. So here's Russia turning tanks out, 250 a year. Here's the United States, so that they're able to process, they get 70 out a year in this, refurbishing process. Combat aircraft, Russia has it, Ukraine doesn't. Artillery, Russia's got anywhere from an 8-to-1 to, in one case, a 20-to-1 advantage over Ukraine in terms of the amount of shells they could fire. You've got the armored personnel carriers. So helicopters all on the Russian side. The point is, Russia can put a lot more firepower in on Ukraine than Ukraine can put on Russia. So naturally, you're going to have a lopsided disparity in casualties, which is exactly what we've seen over the last. They've done exchanges of bodies, the dead bodies of Ukrainians that the Russians have, and the dead bodies of Russians that Ukrainians have. And over the last 3 exchanges, it's been like one a week over the last 3 weeks. Russia has gotten 0 bodies back because there were no bodies to give, and they've turned over 2,000 bodies in each time. That's 6,000 bodies in just 3 weeks. So it gives you some idea of the scale of the losses that Ukraine is suffering. It's just, it'd be one thing if each side had the same, were roughly comparable with the same kind of weapon systems. Oh, drones, forgot to mention drones. Russia's got about a 3-to-1 advantage in drones. There's not a single category of weapon system that Ukraine can say, oh, we got an advantage. We got more of this than the Russians. We do better than the Russians. The only thing they're doing better than the Russians is stealing money from the United States. That's their genuine talent.
Is Donald Trump going to send 17 Patriot systems to Ukraine?
We don't have them. I mean, he can sit there and send imaginary systems, but the United States isn't sitting on 17 systems that it can send. But just, again, let's do the math. I think each one can fire up 16 missiles, maybe. I don't know the precise number. Okay. 16 times 10, that's 160. So if you got 10 of those systems, and remember, Lockheed Martin's only reproducing, you looking it up? Look it up.
Yes, I'm going to check it out. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you got 10 systems and they each, fire 16 missiles, okay, that's 160 right there. That is, again, close to being 1/3 of the entire annual production of Lockheed Martin. But that means they fire once. Well, they're going to need to reload and fire again, and maybe reload and fire again. So all of a sudden you've gone from 160 to 480. And now you're close to 90% of annual production. So it just, that's why I say Trump is delusional. He'll tell you whatever he needs.
It seems that 16 missiles each Patriot system has. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's not like you get the fire and reuse it. Pick it up, run out there, pick it up, and come back and no, that's not how it works. So, and the Pentagon was specifically asked, did he mean launchers or missiles? And Pentagon says, I don't know. Go ask the White House. Don't ask us. Trump has created a veritable clown show in Washington, D.C. Only it is not entertaining. It's alarming.
Yeah. It's Biden 2.0, Larry. It's not Trump.
God. It's Biden without the ice cream.
Here is Larry, U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense Elbridge Colby wrote a classified memo to the United States Secretary of Defense warning that Ukraine's request for weapons could deplete American stockpiles. If Ukraine can do this to the United States, I would argue so this big deal between the United States and European, how many weapons they're going to send to Europe, and when they're going to deliver the order.
This is
it for the next 10 years?
I think maybe what Trump is doing. Let me try to be charitable here. Maybe what he's doing is he has decided to end the war in Ukraine. But he knows that if he comes out and says that openly, he'll be attacked by people that he needs for political support in the Congress. So instead, he figured out, I'll just tell them what they want to hear. oh yeah, man, we're going to send more weapons. But meanwhile, he understands we don't have them to send, but he'll happily say, yeah, we're going to send them. Yeah, we'll send them. He just didn't say when. You know, it's like that old joke of guys on the beach and the lamp rolls up and he rubs it and says, oh, I get the genie pops out and says, you get one wish. And the guy goes, I want to be on the beach with 3 scantily clad women. The genie goes, wish is granted. Boom. Next thing you know, the guy is there with 3 80-year-old women who are all overweight. Okay. And he realized, I should have thought this through. I should have specified. And, you know, that's what Trump said. Yeah, we'll send you 17. 17 what? Ah, don't worry about it. We'll figure that out. And without defining the details. And without saying, okay, each launcher, because it can fire up to 16 missiles, should ideally have the ability to be reloaded, each one 10 times. Well, wait a second. So if we got one launcher that has to have equivalent of 160 missiles stored, ready for it to fire, and you've got 10 of those, you got 1,600 missiles you need. But we only make 600 a year or 700 a year. Oh, we got a problem. And you know what? Ukraine's not the only one that wants the system. Israel's begging for it. Taiwan wants it. And the U.S. Army says, by God, we got to have some for us too, as well as the Marine Corps. So, you know, high demand, low supply. And there's no production facility that can just say, okay, we're going to hire people and start working 24/7 and we'll get all this stuff cranked right out. No, that's not going to happen. So again, Trump is doing his used car salesman trick, telling everybody what they want to hear. Yeah, man, I am really I'm upset with Putin. I'm really disappointed with that President Putin. He's going to learn the hard way. You know, if he doesn't line up and do what I want, well, 50 days from now, and let me give you some, because you're a relatively new father. You got young children. When your kids are doing something that you don't want them to do, and you say, stop that, and they keep doing it, and you keep saying, stop that, and they keep doing it, and you take no action, that kid's going to run all over you, all right? No respect. Well, that's where Trump is. Nobody's got any respect for him because he keeps talking, making threats, and seldom follows through on it. So, and just, look at the list of nonsense he said over the last 4 weeks. Yeah, we're on the verge. Everyone's lining up to side. They're lining up to kiss my ass to side in trade deals. Remember that? God, that was 4 months ago. Haven't seen a lot of ass kissing. Oh yeah, we're going to be making great announcements about the Abraham Accords. Everybody's on board. Really? We haven't seen the Saudis, the Qataris. Yeah, they may get the HTS, the terrorist guy, Al-Shara, to sign, but so it's not. That's not coming together. Remember the week. So the last week in June, right after the 25th, after the big obliterating bomb of Iran, Trump said, "Oh yeah, the Iranians can't wait to talk to us. We'll be meeting with them next week." Yeah, next week came and went. No, next week. That week came and went. So now we're in this week. You know what? Hasn't happened. So this quote announcement with Ruta. It's in the same category. It's just all it is it's a kabuki theater, a political show. Donald Trump still thinks he's playing a guy that knows how to hire and fire people. And boy, did he bamboozle the American public. Because, they really thought, oh man, this guy, he knows how to judge talent. Oh, he just, you know, he couldn't find a bed bug in a bed bug hotel.
Larry, the problem is that the leadership in Russia and Iran don't play the game that Donald Trump is somehow interested in. He attacks, he says that I'm gonna bomb you, I'm gonna put tariffs on you, sanctions on you. They're not answering these sort of attacks on the part of Donald Trump. And I don't know why Donald Trump is not changing. He's not willing to change his attitude because that doesn't work. So far,
Well,
it didn't work. It's been 6 months.
yeah, let me interrupt you there though. So you're assuming he wants to influence the Chinese and the Iranian and Chinese and Russian leaders. That his everything that he's saying is designed to influence them. It's not. He's saying it's designed to entertain the American people. That's all. Because do you think that the people don't remember what he said 4 or 5 months ago about, they're going to be hell to pay if those hostages don't come out? They didn't come out. But by God, he talked tough about it. They remember, oh yeah, he was firm. So that, the Iranians, let's put it this way. If there is an Iranian leader that's going around saying, I think Donald Trump is sincere and we ought to listen to him, give him a chance, or a Russian leader saying that, they ought to be arrested and put in jail immediately or sent to a psychiatric hospital because they are out of touch with reality. I mean, this is just really unbelievable that anybody thinks that Trump is a reliable business partner that you can talk to and you can negotiate with. Now, a lot of what we see is his public persona.
Yeah.
I have heard from people that, when they meet him one-on-one, a completely different person. He's very insecure and really wants to be liked. And so he does everything. Hey, you like my shirt? Great. I'll take it off and give it to you. Good idea, Dima. Give me your shirt. So that's what Trump's doing with this. He's telling Ruta, he's telling the Europeans what they want to hear on that front, but then he's turning around and saying, you're going to pay up 30%. You're going to pay tariffs. And they're going, what? The tariffs are really hurting Germany because their exports of Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, and Audis sales are dropping because cars are now too expensive. And, it's up to this point, Trump's gotten away with it because there hasn't been a lot of overt, visible economic damage. But now it's starting to trickle in, so we'll see.
Is he achieving his goal with the 5% of the GDP of European countries going to the defense budget?
Well, let's define what his goal was. If his goal was that they would actually spend 5% and actually allocate that money and put the money out there, no, that hasn't been achieved. If his goal was just get them to say, nod ahead, yeah, we're going to do that, but with no intention of doing it, then mission accomplished. You got that done. Yay. Yeah, I got him to agree. 5%. Where's the money? Show me the money. Let's see it. Oh, man. I left my wallet in the car. I'll be back. That kind of thing.
Because they have to somehow cut the social spending in terms of the healthcare, all of these things in Europe, that totally different from the system that we know from the United States. But is that gonna, let's assume that it seems that in France they're talking about the main threat to France is Russia, and the way that Russian, as you mentioned, the Russian military is growing, their power is somehow threatening in the mind of Europeans. But after all, do they really believe that Russia would attack them, Larry?
Oh
Or they're
no.
just somehow playing? How you can this is ridiculous. You
Yeah.
you spend too much on your defense budget when you know that Russia would not attack you,
Well,
and to send it to the United States. That it's unbelievable.
no. Again, you've got this unnatural attachment to reality. You think it ought to be logical. Again, given your background as a scientist, man, this isn't science. This is magic. This is show business. It doesn't have to be real, but it just has to look real or sound real or feel real. And it doesn't have to accomplish what they claim that it accomplishes. But by God, they're going to say, we obliterated that place. It's done. It's toast. And then like in the very next week, hey, Iran, we got to let those IAEA inspectors back in. And all Iran had to say is, no, we don't need him anymore. You obliterated you wiped it all out. Nothing there to see. And then the United States has got to say, well, maybe we didn't obliterate it. Oh, no, sure you did, man. It was devastating. We're never going to recover. I'd love to be in the Iranian government giving the recommendations on this. I just tell them, go out and screw with the Americans to your heart's content for what they've done. Because, Trump said it. He's the one now. Force him to have to admit that he was wrong. Force him. But, because it's easy now for Iran to say, no, listen, our system was completely obliterated, so no need for inspections. But that, so this is, I think Trump has damaged his credibility. And again, let's go back to the Europeans on the French side. We think that they are our friends, and yet Trump is punishing them with tariffs. And all he's doing is reinforcing the message of the BRICS countries, which is we can no longer live in a system that's dominated and controlled by the US dollar because it's not being controlled according to economic principles and objective facts. It's being controlled for political purposes, being used as a weapon, an actual weapon that inflicts death and destruction on other countries. And we need to have an alternative. I jokingly said I think I was talking to the judge, that I can see in 2 years. No, I said this was Alistair. In 2 years, you're going to see Russia, China, Brazil, India, South Africa get together, and they're going to give Donald Trump their version of a Nobel Prize. And for what reason? Because they say, Donald, without you, we BRICS would never become as strong and as successful as we are. Thank you. Because everything that Trump is doing is encouraging people to go, man, he's crazy. And I don't like being threatened with the dollar. Let's go over here. I like hanging out with the Chinese and Russians a lot better. They leave me alone, which is true. And they've actually got resources to give. So, it's one of those situations that Trump is spending more time alienating other countries instead of, but in his own mind, he goes, oh, everybody loves us. They think this is great. This is wonderful. Remember, those countries are lining up to kiss my ass. And nobody will call him and say, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't see many lipstick marks on your ass. Looks like these people you claim been kissing it haven't been there. So, but they're lying. It's all about the used car salesman selling the grift.
I would argue that he's doing a better job to unify, to somehow convince Russia, China, Iran, and India that they need some sort of alternative for what the United States is offering to the world.
Yeah.
Better than I would never argue that, Larry, I think what Donald Trump has done to Iran, nobody could do it. Nobody could do it to convince them that there is no future with the United States.
Well, right. What they did, I described it as this was Iran's Pearl Harbor moment. Because if you go back and look at what the political condition in the United States was prior to Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, that it was divided, and actually a majority of the population was against getting involved in the war in Europe. Wanted nothing to do with it. The day after, December 8th, after that attack, the United States was like 100% united, mobilized, willing to fight until the death, to go out against this, to get those who had done this to us. I think that's exactly what happened in Iran. But Alistair, he made an excellent point that I hadn't thought of, but I think he's right. He said this not only has brought together the different, if you will, ethnic groups in Iran, because it's predominant, overwhelming majority are Shia. There's still other religious groups. There's still some Christians, some Jews, some Hindus, etc. But it also united the Shia world. So you've got the Shia that are scattered throughout Syria and Jordan and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and Afghanistan. So this is actually unified them in a way that they've never been in a long time. And that creates a real problem for both Israel and the United States, because instead of weakening it, causing it to collapse, it's made it very strong. And when it comes to, if they want to trade missile strikes, Israel can't withstand it. Israel would collapse. Iran's too big. Israel doesn't have enough. Even if Israel is supplied with all the missiles in the United States that are not nuclear, they wouldn't have enough to cover the territory of Iran, because Iran is so big. And just, people say, well, what are you talking about? Just do the comparison. Look at what Russia has been doing in Ukraine. In 3 days, they fired over 1,700 drones and missiles. That is more missiles and drones than were fired by both Iran and Israel combined over 12 days. And it does significant damage, but Ukraine, which is 1/3 the size of Iran, still hasn't collapsed after a volley like that. And there's no way in hell Israel could match anything like that in going against a country the size of Iran.
Larry, do we know what was the outcome of Netanyahu's visit to the United States? Because so far, nothing came out in the media. Nobody was talking about it. I don't know if you saw the article in Axios. They were talking about that there was somehow the differences between Iran and Russia during the war. And as he mentioned, the sources mostly from Israel.
Yeah.
And Europeans are talking behind the scene. Russian president is asking Iran to consider zero enrichment.
Yeah, that was, in fact, the author, the reporter on that, he's Jewish, Israeli. Oh, gee, no incentive there to lie. No, it's just pure propaganda. If anything, it's driven Russia and Iran closer together, China and Iran closer together.
But you feel that the main reason of Netanyahu's visit was the Epstein case? Or
yeah, actually, I think so. I think that was an element. Let me throw out one possibility. There are photographs circulating online of sort of a before and after, or a picture of Jeffrey Epstein when he was alive. It's a side profile, so it's like you can see this side of his face, and then his body on the gurney being taken out of the prison. And they can blow it up so you can put the heads side by side. Looks like the heads don't necessarily, the nose is different, the ear is definitely different. So if those photos are authentic, and that's the big if those are actually authentic photos, then that suggests that Epstein was, maybe this whole thing was a charade. In other words, he was arrested under whose watch? Oh, that'd be Donald Trump. I think the case was brought in the Southern District of New York. Who's in the Southern District of New York as an attorney? Oh, that'd be the daughter of James Comey. On what airplane did James Comey fly from? Oh, he flew from Jeffrey Epstein's island to Norway, I believe, accompanied by Bill Gates and Bill Clinton. So, you know, do you, and so this guy, Mossad, you know, Epstein appears to be a bona fide asset of Mossad. Not an officer, but someone who was an agent, and Mossad promised to protect. Did they stage his death and substitute another body in there? A body made to look up, to look like his, and to get him out of the country with a, you know, now secret identity, hiding out in Israel. That's one possibility. Or the other, but remember, all this happened under Donald Trump's watch the first time. The arrest, the incarceration, and then dead in 36 days. And then here's Trump blaming it on Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Sorry, dude, you were the president when he got picked up. And it wouldn't be the first time that Israel has made an issue about trying to get some of its intelligence assets out of U.S. prisons. Jonathan Pollard was one, where I had an argument with Alan Dershowitz, a debate over that. Oh my goodness, 26 years ago. But the point of all this is that I think Epstein was a priority, at least on Bibi Netanyahu's list, to get, you know, because if Trump pursued it, there were 3 former Israeli prime ministers on the list, according to Ryan Dawson, Ehud Barak and Ehud Olmert, who were allegedly clients or were consorting with Mr. Epstein and underage girls. And they have been mentioned, you know, I'm not slandering them, I'm saying they've been mentioned by the women who claimed abuse as being their abusers. So, you know, that could have very well been a motive for Bibi to say, hey, you know, if you are going to pursue charges on this, make sure these guys are out, or dump it completely, or, you know, you don't want to go into this because you're going to discover that maybe Epstein's alive. You know, there are a couple of different variations, but what we know for sure is Trump is lying. Used car salesman again. Nothing to see here. Keep moving along.
Larry, Syria, it seems that the fight is going on in Syria between Druze and the government, Al-Jolani government, and Al-Shara, whatever is that. His name is different every time we talk about it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Al-Jolani, now Al-Shara. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you feel that somehow in the United States, Donald Trump and maybe Netanyahu were talking about it during the visit, but do they really feel that they can control what's going on in Syria? It doesn't seem Syria would be that easy to be controlled by even Turkey.
Yeah, it is, excuse me. It's turning into a real mess. So Erdogan's got his vision of creating, sort of restoring his version, an updated version of the Ottoman Empire. And that's why he is conspiring with Azerbaijan and pressuring Armenia, and then trying to take control of Syria. Al-Shara is not, he's not falling under the thumb of Erdogan very easily. He's turned out to be a bit of a slippery character. Meanwhile, Israel is, trying to step up its attacks in Syria. And again, Israel does not have the strategic depth to fight in Syria, to fight in Lebanon, to fight in Gaza, to fight in the West Bank, and to fight Iran. Doesn't have it. It's got limited resources. It needs to pick and choose, but it's not, because they're acting very emotionally, not with some strategic plan. So this war has a lot of implications. It's not a good thing. And it is, what it's underscoring is the lack, whatever control the United States thought it once had, it no longer has. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Larry, the defense minister of Iran said that they're not going to buy the ceasefire, and they're not going to, they don't believe that there's going to be a ceasefire between Iran and Israel. Do you still see the threat of new attacks, military interaction between Iran and Israel?
Oh, sure. We'll find tomorrow's a pivotal date, because that's when the snapback provisions on the JCPOA kick in. Now, up to this point, the Europeans haven't kicked those in. If they do so tomorrow, that could give Iran the full impetus to say, fine, we're going to withdraw from the non-proliferation treaty. When they do that, then all of a sudden the threat of, my God, because they have the scientific knowledge and expertise to build a nuclear bomb. They do. The only thing that's prevented them from doing it up to this point is the pronouncements of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. So as long as it's a religious fatwa preventing them from building it, they're not going to build it. If Khamenei decides, you know what, we need to have a nuclear weapon now for self-defense to protect Muslims, then they're going to do it.
You mentioned the case of Iran, Lebanon, Syria, but I would argue one of the main cases for Israel is Yemen. And Yemen is not just easy to be defeated. It's not. They're not going to be able to defeat it.
Oh, no, I totally disagree. I mean, they capitulated to the United States. Don't you remember? Are you saying you don't believe Donald Trump? What's wrong with you, Nima? What's wrong? My God, I'm outraged.
Yeah,
I saw Donald Trump go on television and say, hey, the Yemenis capitulated, so we're pulling out. So, yeah. Well, you talk about David, one of the stories that they tell within Christianity and Judaism is the story of David and Goliath. And David is the King David, who later goes on to become an adulterer. He was, as a young lad, the armies of Israel or Judea were just getting their ass kicked by this big behemoth of a guy, Goliath. And so David comes out with his little sling and rock and whomps him in the middle of the head and kills him. Hey! But that's always, that story of the big, strong, imposing, vicious person against the little guy. Well, guess what? Israel always tried to pretend that it was David. It's not. It's an older, fatter version of Goliath, and it's getting rocked by Yemen, who's David. They're small, but they are tenacious. The Yemenis are something else, man. They are not. They're not sitting back and easily intimidated. I mean, and they keep launching missiles. I don't know why, maybe there's a supply problem. They don't have an unlimited supply as the frequency. But you can imagine if they had an ample supply, they could be launching, 10 or 20 a day. Israel, they could drain Israel's air defense system with just that. So yeah, in Israel, what it's highlighted, it's helped explode the myth of Israeli invincibility and U.S. military invincibility. Nope, we're very invincible.
Larry, before wrapping up the session, how much of concern is Azerbaijan and the situation there for Iran and Russia as time goes by because of the importance of the region? That region is so much important for both, and I would argue even for China.
I had to look up the population of Azerbaijan. I believe it's like 8 or 9 million, somewhere in there. Iran's a population of 91 million. Russia's 141 million. Azerbaijan is an irritant. It's playing a double game. I think they're going to discover not only did the drones that hit and were used in Iran to kill civilians and scientists and political leaders probably came through Azerbaijan, and that some of the drones used on the attacks on Operation Spiderweb in Russia came out of Azerbaijan, that the former Iranian President Raisi, who was visiting Azerbaijan and ended up getting killed in a helicopter crash, that maybe that was sabotaged by the Azeris. But Aliyev, who's the leader of Azerbaijan, he's got a problem. Just last week, Russia blew up 2 oil refineries in Ukraine that they had previously not touched. Well, it turns out those 2 oil refineries were owned personally by Aliyev, president of Azerbaijan. Last week, Russia took them out and sending a message to Aliyev, you better back off or we can really hurt you. So let's just go through a scenario. Let's say, well, Azerbaijan with 9 million total population and an army, I don't know what size, wants to invade Iran. Iran can wipe out Baku, the capital, and its oil fields in a heartbeat with the ballistic missiles. So, the Azeris aren't going to do that. I don't think they're that suicidal. So yeah, it's a problem, and that's why Russia had actually started this crackdown on Azeri criminal gangs inside Russia, and that's what led to this initial attack on the Russian news stations in Baku. So it's I think, but judging by the actual size, it's strategically a very important place, but it doesn't have the heft and the size that an Iran does or a Russia does. So if they get out of line, Aliyev will be killed or something.
Larry, have you ever heard Donald Trump talking about the Ukrainian attack on Russia? Because every time he has the opportunity, today he talked about the way that Russia is attacking Ukraine, just destroying everything. But he didn't mention anything about the Ukrainian attack on nuclear facilities, nuclear bombers in Russia. Why does he do that? Why he's not interested in talking about these issues? Because if you want to have some sort of balance in the way that you're talking about, you have to consider both sides, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, he's chosen a side. He's on the side of Ukraine. He's not on the side of Russia. He has zero interest in Russia other than wanting to score a victory to look like, oh yeah, I brought peace. I delivered on my promise. which clearly was a failed promise. Yeah, so it's that's been one of the hallmarks that he could have, again, as we spoke earlier, if his intent was to try to change Putin's perception and to get Putin to trust him, there are a number of things that Trump could have done that would have moved it in that direction, such as announcing, I'm cutting off the intelligence sharing. We're going to end any supply of weapons that could be used offensively against a Russian soldier, person, or place. But he's, never done that, and never made any actual gestures, or just say, hey, that every time Ukraine, Ukraine has launched several attacks recently that have been targeting purely civilian locations in Russia. Trump, if he would have come out and condemned every one of those, again, would have sent a signal. But he's not doing any of that. And so that's what the Russians. All they got to do is they hear what he's saying, but they want to wait and watch and see what he's doing. So, is he actually taking steps to settle this conflict, or does he want to keep it going? I think he wants to keep it going.
Today, NATO Secretary General Rutte, he said that Russia is not serious in their talks because he's sending a historian to negotiate the talks.
Yeah.
No, he's talking about Medinsky.
I wonder if Trump started off the meeting saying, hey, hello there, Marky. Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? Yeah. Daddy, I'm here. I'm here, Daddy. Oh my God. Yeah, this guy has no self-respect.
No. He doesn't.
Boot-licking politician.
Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today. Great pleasure, as always.
The battle of the shirts to be continued on Friday.
Exactly.
All right.
See you soon, Larry.
All right, Neva. Thanks, man. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.